All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. It's a little after 1. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our NIFA webinar on the overview of the AFRI Plant Health and Production and Plant Products Program area. Within this program area, we have our Plant Production Division and our Plant Protection Division. And my name is John Erickson, and I am a National Program Leader in the Plant Production Division and also serving as the Acting Division Director for the division. I want to personally welcome everyone and thank you for your time this afternoon. What we plan to do over the next hour and a half or so is to briefly describe our AFRI programs and introduce you to the people that are involved in these programs. And so we'll do that in about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have a 45-minute Q&A session. For the Q&A session, you'll have a little button on your browser there, or your Zoom window, and that's how you'll be communicating with us, all of your questions. You can enter those at any time, and then some of those will be answered directly through the chat, and then some of those our program specialists will ask to us orally during the Q&A session. So feel free to start entering those at any time, and if you have especially questions that are specific to a program, if you could indicate which program you're sending them to, that would be helpful for our specialists to direct them to the appropriate person to answer them during the Q&A. And I would also like to thank our specialists that are helping with that, Shelby Service and Chris Green, our program specialists from our divisions that are be helping manage the Q&A and the slides today. So a special shout out to them. And I think that's all we need to get started here. So next slide, please. So hopefully many of you had the opportunity to attend the general overview session earlier in the week. If you didn't, I believe that's going to be posted, if not already posted, and I encourage you to look at that to address some of the more general issues related to particularly new investigators. But we just wanted to remind everybody here, especially for those that didn't get the chance to see that, some of the opportunities available for new investigators. New investigators are able to apply for standard grants or seed grants. And so something new this year in the seed grant area is all new investigators are eligible for seed grants. Seed grants can be up to $300,000. Including indirect costs for up to 2 years of duration. Seed grants are reviewed separately. All seed grants are reviewed together, but separately from standard grants. And separate funding consideration is available for strengthening and new investigator seed grants. In terms of seed grants, you should be looking at those as projects to collect preliminary data that will make you competitive then for standard grants, which new investigators are also eligible to apply for. When you're looking at standard grants, those grants are all reviewed together. So new investigator grants along with all other standard grants. Special consideration can be given by NIFA program staff to fund highly meritorious new investigator applications that fall near but below the funding line. And there's no separate pool of funding for new investigator standard grants. So, next slide, please. And remember to check the new investigator box for either of those as you're submitting your application. And what we really like to talk about today is the specific programs that are in the plant health and production and plant products program area. So these programs include the foundational knowledge of agricultural production systems, the foundational knowledge of plant products, the pests and beneficial species in agricultural production systems, pollinator health, research and application, the physiology of agricultural plants, plant breeding for agricultural production, conventional plant breeding for cultivar development, and the NSF NIFA Plant Biotic Interactions Program. Next slide. So those are, these programs here are some of our cross-cutting programs that apply either across divisions or in some cases, I think even across agencies, so like NIFA and NSF, for instance. And those include agricultural microbiomes and plant systems and natural resources, the Critical Agricultural Research and Extension Program, or CARE, the Data Science for Food and Systems program, and the Tactical Sciences for Agricultural Biosecurity. So we're going to hear a little bit about each of these programs now. And first up is Matt Naguaggio.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Matthew Naguaggio, or just Matt, and this program is the foundational knowledge of agricultural production systems. And I would just start by saying, if there's one little thing that you need to remember from this program, it is production systems. That is what makes the difference between this and many other programs that are offered at NIFA. The program code is A1102. Very critical to put that in your applications. Otherwise, your application will become lost in the system. And looking at the budget request, this program will either fund you at the $650,000 level for research only, or $750,000 for integrated project for a total of 3 to 5 years. So the project type, like I just said, are research only or integrated. Integrated project means that you add something else to the research component. That something else could be extension or education or both. So when you do that, you can add your budget all the way to $750,000. What type of grant do we offer? Standard grant, conference, and phase. You will hear this from most of our programs that will be discussed today. And the application deadline is June 17 of this year, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We have a lot of people that have submitted application last year. They were 1 hour late. And when we ask them, they say, well, it's because NIFA is located in Kansas City and Kansas City is in Central Time. No, the RFA says Eastern Time. The contact, it is myself, like I told you, I'm a national science liaison. I'm based here in Washington, D.C., in case any of you is traveling in the D.C. area. I also have John Erickson, the co-lead, and Nirja Tiagi, the program specialist. Next. Now, I'm sure you are asking, is my research a good fit for this program? The type of thing that we are funding, overall goal and priority is to develop innovative solutions to challenges limiting or threatening the productivity and profitability of agricultural systems. That is a very key word. And we have 4 different priorities here. One is to investigate how multiple management components can be integrated to enhance cropping systems performance. The word integrated and multiple management components, very important there. The second priority is to determine the impact of production systems on the structure of microbial community. Structure of microbial community. I know we have another program, microbiome. We want to make sure that we don't overlap with that other program. That's why we say structure of microbial communities here. Third priority is to investigate how changes to cropping systems impact crop performance, soil health, and other outcomes that are beneficial to systems resilience. And the last one, priority here is to conduct synthesis and meta-analysis of existing data or develop new or extend existing models on performance of agricultural production systems again. So this last one is on metadata analysis and modeling. But the key word for this program is focusing on production systems, looking at it as a whole. The next program will be presented by Vance. Vance?
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, Vance Owens, National Program Leader here at NIFA, and I appreciate Matt providing the initial emphasis on little things, but big things, and that would be the program area priority code, because this has to be correct, as he mentioned, in order for it to get funneled to the right place. And so this is A1103. And this title of this is Foundational Knowledge of Plant Products. So for this, the budget requests are not to exceed $650,000 per project, and these projects can last from 3 to 5 years. Unlike Matt's, research projects only are available in this particular program area, with similar types of grant types, including standard conference and all the phase grants. Excuse me. The application deadline is May 20th of this year at 5 p.m. Eastern time again. And the contacts here are myself, Victoria Finkenstadt, who is another NPL co-lead on this program, and Shelby Service, who is working with us today and is working on this particular program area within AFRI. Next slide. So some of the funding priority in this is to support projects that study the synthesis of plant-derived and high-value chemicals and ingredients for use in foods, pharmaceuticals, and other natural products. And I'd probably emphasize a little bit here that the projects need to focus on agriculturally important plants. That could include native species and minor crop plants, and even weeds. A proposal that comes in does need to address one of these 3 priority areas that are listed here. The first one being macronutrients and or micronutrient synthesis, accumulation, and or availability that are beneficial to human health and nutrition. And I'm going to make just a brief comment about the nutrition and human health part of this at the end. Secondly would be primary and secondary metabolism, regulating the synthesis of plant metabolites and its chemical ingredients that improve the quality of food and or feed. Or, and I think the or is critical here, because you can address one, you have to address one of these, but you could address 2 or 3. And so finally, the third one being plant-based chemicals that have industrial and or pharmaceutical relevance. And I would just point out that in relation to this, that we're not looking for applications that are specifically medicinal studies or developing alternative plant defense compounds. So avoid that and focus in on these priority areas that are listed here. With that, the next section will be by Erica.
All right. Good afternoon. So my name is Erica Kistner-Thomas. I'm a relatively new National Program Leader, and I'm going to be discussing the Pest and Beneficial Species in Agricultural Production Systems, Program Code A1112. Now, these projects should not exceed $750,000 per year, and that's also for a 3 to 5 year period. And with the project types here are research only, as well as integrative projects, which could include research and extension. And similarly, we have the same grant types as previously discussed, the standard, conference, and phase. The deadline for this program is May 27th, and I am the sole NPL currently for this program, and our program specialist is Logan Appenfeller. Next slide. Now, I apologize for the wall of text here, but basically this is a very broad program, and it has a lot of different research priorities. So overall, this program supports projects that advance the knowledge of invasive and established pest species and associated beneficial species, leading to innovative and biologically based strategies to manage those pests. Now, those pests can include things like invertebrates, plant pathogens and their vectors, nematodes, or weeds. The caveat here is that the beneficial species in this program will be restricted simply to biocontrol agents and microbes that play a role in pest management. We have a lot of different program priorities here, including biotic and abiotic factors affecting the abundance or spread of agriculturally important plant pests, disease vectors, or beneficial species relevant to pest management. Behavioral attributes of pests and beneficial species, including intra and interspecies species interactions and communications that are relevant to pest management, factors that contribute to invasives, including but not limited to studies using population genetics and genomic approaches, and models to predict or prevent and manage outbreaks or pinpoint geographic distribution origin. We also have a priority for the movement, studying the movement and dispersal dynamics of pest or beneficial species and mechanisms of pest resistance to pesticides or toxins in genetically modified plants, and development of strategies to mitigate resistance and or crop failure. And then finally, we also have a priority specifically for conference applications in weed biology. These conference grants are aimed to bring together experts in weed biology, plant genomics, herbicide resistance, and data science to better understand how genomic information could lead to better solutions to manage weeds. So overall, this program is very broad, but just keep in mind, if you have chemical control or IPM, you're going to want to submit to crop protection and pest management, the CPPM program. This is strictly for bio-based control or specific invasive species studies. Next slide. Now, on the same line with beneficial species, you're probably wondering where pollinators fit in. I also manage that program. This is Pollinator Health and Research and Application, program code A1113. Similarly as the previous program, it's a max budget of $750,000 per year per project for a 2 to 3 year period. And these project types include research only, extension only, education only, and then we also have a research coordination network. And then the grant types are standard conference as well as phase. The deadline is May 27th. And we have 2 NPLs on this program, myself and Megan O'Rourke, as well as Logan Appenfeller as the program specialist. Next slide. So for this program, this covers both native and wild pollinators. So this program supports projects that promote healthy populations of animal pollinators in agricultural systems where reliance of crops on pollinators for pollination services increasing, where declines of pollinators are evident. So some of your research priorities should include one of the following: factors that influence the abundance and diversity and health of pollinators, functions of the microbiome associated with pollinators and their role in promoting healthy populations, development and evaluation of innovative tools and management practices that would likely be adapted by stakeholders to ensure healthy pollinators, development, implementation, or evaluation of management practices of other crop pests and diseases that also ensure protection of pollinators. We also have education-only projects that target K through 14 level students that advance their learning on pollinators and agricultural systems or landscapes. Extension-only projects that include informal training, workshops, and demonstration projects related to pollinators in agricultural systems, as well as the establishment of a research coordination network for a national native bee and monitoring plan. So again, this program covers both domestic pollinators, so managed bumblebees, managed mason bees, managed honeybees, as well as wild pollinators. And that's it for me. Thank you. I'll leave it over to John.
John, are you muted? John?
I wonder if we've lost him.
It looks like we lost him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, do you want to read John's slides?
I was thinking that maybe we can skip those and then come back to that when he join us.
Or Ed, maybe. Ed, could you do it?
Yeah, I could. Why don't we do what Matt suggested? We can come back to these, and I'm the next speaker in line.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ed Kalaikow, National Program Leader in the Plant Systems Production Division. I'll be talking about 2 AFRI funding opportunities for plant breeding and genomics. And the first one shown on this slide is plant breeding for agricultural production, A1114. 1141 that focuses for the most part on upstream components of the plant breeding pipeline or process. While the second opportunity, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, is conventional plant breeding for cultivar development. And the focus there is on cultivar development. Its priority area is A1143, and it focuses more on the downstream components of the plant breeding pipeline or process that includes testing, evaluation, and release of finished cultivars. So the difference between these two opportunities for plant breeding, one focuses more on the upstream parts, and which is A1141 shown here, and the other focuses more on the downstream components. So let me cover A1141 first. The A1141 program area will provide up to 650,000 total per project for 3 to 4 years, and 800,000 total per project for projects that include significant partnerships. And so this is a new grant type area that hasn't been introduced yet, but partnerships grants would be ones in which there's significant collaboration with minority serving institutions or small to mid-sized institutions, EBSCOR state institutions, and also international partners. So for partnerships with international groups, the proposal must be submitted through a project director and an eligible US institution with a subaward to the international partner. And the research objectives for international partnerships must be of benefit to US agriculture. So those are partnership grant opportunities. Another one is a $15 million total per project for project periods of up to 5 years for coordinated agricultural projects, or CAP grants, CAP, that address innovation in genomic technology to accelerate breeding progress. And so one of the questions as a new investigator you may be asking is would this be an appropriate research area for a new investigator to submit? My advice would be that it would not be one for a new investigator to submit as the lead project director. And I think it would be best if there's interest in serving as a co-project director or a significant collaborator. And here's why. The lead PD is typically a senior scientist with significant and established networks already within the research community. There's well-established scientific expertise and administrative skills, which are also a part of the lead project director's role. So it takes substantial pre-planning and networking in order to pull a team together for a CAP. So given those reasons, I would not suggest that it's something that a new investigator would take on earlier in their career, but again, perhaps participate as a co-project director or significant collaborator. So as you've heard, the various project types include research projects and integrated projects. Again, integrated projects must be both research and education and is only for the CAP. Grant types are standard, conference and phase, and CAP and phase. And then the application deadline is May 20th, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Program contacts are myself, as well as Ann Stapleton and Shelby Service. Next slide. So the plant breeding priorities are aimed at supporting public breeding efforts, and the emphasis here is on public breeding to improve crop productivity, efficiency, quality, and performance, particularly for local and regional adaptation to soils and climates of US farming system. It includes all agriculturally important plants, from apples to zucchini. So if you're working on plants and you're a plant breeder, you can apply to this program. We would be of interest in receiving a proposal. The plant breeding targets focus on research to introduce traits, desirable traits, for example, that are listed here. But again, the list is not limited to this. It could include increased nutrient use efficiency or photosynthetic photosynthetic efficiency, tolerance to drought, flood, and temperature extremes for climate adaptation. Additional examples include biotic traits for resistance to pests and diseases, quality traits for improved taste, aroma, nutrition, and then new this year is an emerging area, plant breeding for food safety to reduce foodborne illness. Another example is breeding for adaptation for vertical agricultural systems or contained environments. And then finally, the integrated research and education cap on innovation and genomic technology to accelerate breeding progress. So the priority research areas are listed here. They could be in the area of pre-breeding and germplasm enhancement, participatory breeding, selection theory, applied quantitative genetics, phenomics, crop growth modeling, inbreeding, and new this year, artificial intelligence research focus on ways to leverage parameters and processes that directly relate to the theory, genetics, and crop models. So AI could be very useful to plant breeders in making predictive decisions. The next slide. Okay, so the next funding opportunity that I want to talk about is the conventional plant breeding for cultivar development, which prior to this year was part of the prior program that I just talked about. But in 2021, this has now been established as a separate priority area based on stakeholder input. And so you'll be seeing this change in a soon to be released AFRI RFA update. And so again, this one is not listed in the current RFA, but it will be in an updated RFA. And the program code is A1143. Projects can be 500,000 total per project for project periods of 3 to 5 years. Project types include research projects only. And again, the grant types are standard, conference, and phase. Application deadline, May 20th, 5 p.m. Eastern. And again, the contacts are myself and Stapleton and Shelby Service. Next slide. So like the previous priority area, the funding priorities support public breeding. Again, the emphasis is on public breeding efforts that provide farmers with greater access to locally and regionally adapted cultivars. The research must address later stages of cultivar development, specifically aimed at testing and evaluation of developed materials in established regional trials with the primary goal of finishing off the cultivar and to accelerate getting them out to farmers. Relevance to cultivar development should be clearly justified, demonstrable, and specific, and research that incorporates training of field-based plant breeders is encouraged. So this is a very applied aspect of the plant breeding area that is now a separate priority area in the RFA. And then I'll just mention a few things just to close here. I think in general, you'll see that with all of these programs, at least in my experiences, has shown that outstanding proposals, which is where you want to be at the end of the day to get your project funded. And these may be simple things, but they're all generally well-written. It doesn't require a lot of work on the part of reviewers to search through the proposal plan. It presents clear objectives and work plans. There's strong justifications for the impact of the research, and it typically addresses any potential pitfalls. But particularly in the plant breeding programs, 99.9% of the proposals include an applied plant breeder on it. This is not necessarily a fundamental basic science program, but it could include that aspect of it, but it's targeting plant breeding efforts in public breeding projects. And so finally, just to conclude, if you're interested in seeing funded abstracts from the program, if you just go and Google NIFA, N-I-F-A, plant breeding, genetics, and genomics, it'll pull up the web page that has the list of funded projects over the last 7 years. And that information would be of maybe of help to you as well. Thank you very much. And the next speaker, I guess we'll go back to John.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, everyone. My VPN disconnected there and dropped me quickly there. So I was wondering, I'll be happy to go over the Physiology of Agricultural Plants program for everyone. This program code for this program is A1152, and the program budget request is up to $650,000 for project periods of 3 to 5 years. This program accepts research projects only for project types, and for grant types include standard, conference, and phase grants. The deadline for standard grants is May 20th this year at 5 p.m. Eastern, as has been mentioned for others. There is no specific deadline for conference grants for this program or for many of the other AFRI programs, but we do request letters of intent for proposals, which are not required for the standard grants. Other contacts for this program include Ed, and Shelby Service is a program specialist for this program. Next slide, please. The Physiology of Agricultural Plants program focuses on improving productivity or other performance factors of agriculturally important plants using physiological approaches. These physiological approaches can include molecular, biochemical, whole plant, agronomic, or ecophysiological approaches. And emphasis areas of interest include plant growth and developmental processes, things like plant architecture, carbon assimilation, source-sink relationships, mechanisms of plant response to abiotic stresses, particularly things like water use efficiency, drought tolerance, and nutrient uptake, assimilation, and or utilization, particularly increased plant use efficiency for nitrogen, phosphorus, or other supplemental nutrients. One of the things a lot of people have been interested in is sort of the success rates. This program is pretty competitive. We typically get around 70 to 80 standard grant proposals per year, and end up funding around 8 or 9 of those. So the funding success rate tends to be around 10 to 15% for this program. And so that's all I have for this program. I'm not sure who's next now since all right, so I guess it's Ann.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. I'm Ann Litchins Park. I'm a national program leader within the Division of Plant Protection. I'm also the acting division director for the Division of Plant Protection. There's sort of two divisions that contribute to the Plant Health and Production and Plant Products program area. That's a mouthful. So yeah, first I'm going to tell you about the Plant Biotic Interactions program, which is a partnership between the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and the National Science Foundation. I see that I've already gotten some questions about this program in the chat, which I will be happy to respond to in our Q&A session. But I think well, I'll start out saying that the program area priority code for this program is A1171. And I will say that the review process for this program is a joint review process, but the award process is separate. And so I think that pertains to some of the questions that I've seen asked so far, and I can go into more detail in the Q&A session for anyone who's interested. There is no upper limit for the budgets of projects submitted to the Plant Biotic Interactions program, but it is helpful to take a look at some of the projects that have been funded through this program in the past. And you can see that the typical range for budgets is $50,000 to $300,000 per year for project periods from 2 to 4 years. And this program supports research projects and research and education projects. It supports standard, conference, and phase grants. There is no deadline for this program. Applications are submitted, as I mentioned, to NSF for a joint review process, and they can be submitted at any point during the year. If people have questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them in the Q&A session. As I mentioned, my name is Ann Lichens-Park, and I am the NIFA person who involved in the Plant Biotic Interactions program. And I have two colleagues at the National Science Foundation, Michael Mishkin and Nicole D'Onofrio, and their email addresses are listed here as well. So next slide, please. The Plant Biotic Interactions program supports research on processes that mediate beneficial and antagonistic interactions between plants and their viral, bacterial, oomycete, fungal, plant, and invertebrate symbionts, pathogens, and pests. Projects submitted to the Plant Biotic Interactions program focus on the mechanistic level, looking at these interactions. The projects can focus on the biology of the plant host, its pathogens, pests, or symbionts, and interactions among these. And one of the really exciting things, I think, about this program is that it is expected that we will support research all along the spectrum from basic science to translational science, projects that have aspects of both, everything in between.
You need to update Bixby Voice to
So let's see. I also have a URL there that people can click on if they have more, if they want to see more information about this particular program. Let's see, I think we're running a little behind schedule, so I'll try to move quickly. The next program that I want to talk about is one of our cross-cutting programs, the Agricultural Microbiomes in Plant Systems and Natural Resources. This program is a partnership between the Plant Systems Division, the Bioenergy, Natural Resources and Environment Division, and the Institute of Food Safety and Nutrition. The program area priority code is A1402, and budgets cannot exceed more than $850,000 total per project. These are research-only projects, and you can submit standard conference and phase projects as has been identified for several of the programs here. The application deadline is July 15th, 2021. I'm the national program leader, and Chris Green is the program specialist that works on this program. Next slide, please. So the Agricultural Microbiomes in Plant Systems and Natural Resources program supports research investigating the interactions among plant host, environment, and the microbiome, with the idea that it's critical for improving the sustaining agricultural productivity and quality in plant systems, associated natural resources, human nutrition, and health. There are 3 program area priorities in this program. The first is characterizing molecular mechanisms and signal exchange involved in microbiome assembly and interactions in various environments or physiological states, such as stress, diseases, or growth stages. And functionally, the second priority area is functionally characterizing microbiomes and microbiome metabolites and conferring specific host phenotypes, optimization of environmental processes, and or host microbiome interactions. And then the final program area priority is defining genomic elements that shape functional diversity, virulence, and resistance to sanitation and or microbial treatment of foodborne pathogens associated with plant foods. So you may remember that Matt Nwaju talked about the program that he is involved in supporting microbiome structure. This particular program emphasizes microbiome function, and I think so that's a key difference. And I think that's it for me. Our next speaker is Vijay Nandula.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to talk about the critical agricultural research and extension or the CARE program. This is again one of the cross-cutting programs. By cross-cutting, we mean these programs address 2 or more of the 6 priority areas of the AFRI Foundational and Applied Science program. So again, you have not to sound like a broken record, but it's important that you identify the program area priority code in your applications. The CARE priority code is A1701. The proposed budgets available are $300,000 per project for a project period of 1 to 3 years. And these are integrated projects only that have a combination of research and extension in them. The grant types are standard and phase grants, and the application deadline is July 17th, 2021, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The program contacts are any of the 3 NPLs listed here, including myself. Next slide, please. The CARE funding priorities include critical challenges and opportunities that research and extension together can address to improve our nation's agricultural and food systems. Projects must include integrated activities based on rigorous research combined with effective extension. That's the key. Research combined with extension. Involvement of stakeholders is important as well to develop and rapidly evolve new knowledge or practices. Contribute to improved well-being of the people, communities, plants, and animals involved in and affected by agriculture and food production systems. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to speak next about a cross-cutting program called Data Science for Food and Agricultural Systems, DSFAS. You'll notice that this priority code, 1541, is the same, but the title of this program has changed and the priorities have changed. So again, we have proposed budget requests of $650 for standard, and we have a separate category called Coordination Innovation Networks with a 1 million budget limit for periods of up to 5 years. Research or integrated projects are allowed only, and the grant types include pretty much the full range: standard, conference, and phase. Conference having different budget limits across all of AFRI and also here. And please look at the RFA carefully for phase eligibility. Coordination networks only accept standard and phase applications. Deadline is July 29th, 2021. Please contact myself and our program specialist, Nir Dchiagi, and there are many other national program leaders who assist with this cross-cutting program. We share email address, and your question will be answered by the national program leader, who is the expertise that's relevant to getting you the right answer. Next slide, please. So let's look at the funding priorities for DSFAS. Here we're talking about data science to enable systems and communities to effectively utilize data, improve resource management, and integrate new technologies to further food and agricultural enterprises. And this is something that I wanted to emphasize here in italics. It's something I'm often asked. The most competitive proposals in this area are equally well grounded in agricultural science and data science, that they meet the objectives and the criteria in the RFA well in both fields. So this is the part of the cross-cutting aspect and part of the transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary aspect of this work. I just wanted to mention that we've grouped project priorities into 3 major areas, and there are examples of specifics in each of these, so please check these in the RFA. Analysis of agricultural data, connecting multi-scale, multi-domain, or multi-format data, and agricultural applications and human technology interactions. And in each of those, there's additional details in the RFA. I'd also like to point out that there are some specialty emphasis areas, in particular, applying artificial intelligence and machine learning. So there's details in the RFA about the specific way you would indicate that this is the area that your proposal falls in. There's also specifics for coordinated innovation networks projects in the RFA as well. So, and don't hesitate, please reach out to us if you have questions about eligibility of your particular proposal idea or about any issues that you can't address by reading the RFA. We'll be happy to help. Thanks. Okay, Amara's next.
Thank you, Anne. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amar Fayyad, and I'm a national program leader in the Plant Systems Protection Division. I'm going to describe briefly to you the tactical sciences for agricultural biosecurity. This is one of the cross-cutting programs that is supported by both Plant Systems Protection Division and Animal Division. The program area priority code is A1181, and proposed budget requests are $650,000 total per project for single function projects for periods of 3 to 5 years. It's up to 1 million total per project for integrated projects for project periods of 3 to 5 years. Project types supported by this program are research, extension, and integrated projects. And grant types include standard, conference, and phase. And you've heard about phase from my previous colleagues as well. So the application deadline is July 22nd of this year at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And in addition to myself being one of the contacts for this program, the other NPL is Timothy Sullivan from the Animal Division. And the program specialist on this program is Jesse Ostrander. Next slide, please. So in terms of the funding priorities under this program focuses on increasing U.S. national capacity to prevent, rapidly detect, and respond to biological threats to U.S. agriculture and food supply. Supported activities will be aimed at increasing agricultural biosecurity at the regional and national level and spans across the public and private sectors. The major focus of this program is detection and diagnosis of transboundary and emerging pests and diseases that are associated with animal production systems and or emerging, re-emerging, and invasive diseases, insects, and weeds associated with plant production systems. The second major focus of this program is the rapid response to and recovery from pests and diseases that pose large-scale biosecurity threats to plant and animal production, including existent and imminent threats to U.S. agricultural production systems. So therefore, this program supports common threats to agricultural biosecurity in both animal and plant systems. And I just wanted to add that inclusion of experiential learning opportunities for students on applied aspects of agricultural biosecurity as part of the proposed extension or research activities is encouraged. And I'm just going to add quickly that if your project proposes an integrated function and includes education as a component, budget for education cannot be more than 1/3 of the total budget for the project. And if you have any specific questions related to this program, please feel free to contact me, Tim, and Jesse, and the contacts will be sent out to you in this presentation and also will be listed under the RFA. And with this, I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague, Anne Lichens-Park. Thank you.
Thanks, Amar. Okay, so I'm gonna close our presentation here with a few slides, but I'm gonna move through them very quickly because we wanna make sure that we leave enough time for the Q&A session. But there are a few other AFRI programs that we think might be of interest to the people participating in this webinar. And some of those programs are in the AFRI Education and Workforce Development RFA. There are various fellowships and ways to support students in this RFA. So the awards would not be going to new investigators per se, but there may be students in your labs who would be interested in these particular programs. So that's the postdoctoral fellowships program, A7101, the predoctoral fellowships program, A7101, postdoctoral fellowships, A7201, and research and extension experiences for undergraduates, A7401. Next slide, please. I'm not even going to read all of these other programs that might be of interest to people participating in the webinar. But I think the PowerPoint slides will be provided to people afterwards if you want to take a look at this list, and there might be other programs that might be of interest to you. We would encourage you to investigate these programs. Next slide, please. And these again are contacts for the programs that we've been discussing today. Again, I'm not going to read through all of the names. This information will be made available to you, but these are the contacts for the PHPPP programs that we've talked about. And then the next slide, these are the contacts for the cross-cutting programs that we've discussed today. Next slide. On this slide are some URLs that you can click on to get more information about AFRI the AFRI New Investigator Program, general frequently asked questions about AFRI, and also about the AFRI phase program. Next slide. And then this is an important message that we want to communicate to everybody participating in this webinar today, and that is that you should look at the RFA, and if you see programs that you think might be appropriate to your area of interest, read through that RFA carefully, and then if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact the program staff. We are here to help you, and we're happy to communicate with you. And that actually concludes the presentation portion of our webinar today. But we would like to be able to answer your questions. And I think, Chris Green, are you ready to read some of the questions that have not already been answered?
Yes, I'm ready. The first question we have is for you, Anne. It says, for the NSF USDA joint programs for plant biotic interactions, who is considered a new investigator? Is it determined by USDA or NSF rules, or are they the same?
Okay, so this gets back to what I mentioned when I was presenting the Plant Biotic Interactions program, and that is that the review process for this program is a joint review process. So both NIFA and NSF participate in the organization of the review, but the award process is separate. So actually, excuse me, projects that are recommended for funding by NIFA through this program are actually directly submitted to NIFA through grants.gov. And so the eligibility criteria for NIFA awards is the AFRI eligibility criteria. And so we can tell, I can tell, if a project submitted to the Plant Biotic Interactions program qualifies for phase or as a new investigator, just by looking at your proposal. And that's so the eligibility criteria for new investigator awards that you've been hearing about today also work for NIFA awards from the Plant Biotic Interactions program. And I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Anne. The next question says, what priorities area NIFA funds for urban green space research? So which program would urban green space research fall into?
Maybe we could ask the person who asked that question to clarify a bit in the.
No problem. I'll move on to the next one. This is a general question. It says, can teaching-oriented activities be included in a seed grant proposal?
My understanding is that the seed grant proposals are they integrated? I don't think they're integrated. Mark, are you? No.
Yes, Ann, I'm here.
Okay.
So my answer would be they could be included if it was an integrated program that called for teaching. So if teaching was one of the functions solicited in the program, for example, like tactical sciences for agricultural biosecurity, right? That has teach education as one of the potential programs, then a seed grant to that could include educational opportunities. But for a research only program, it would be only research in the seed grant.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
This next question is for John Erickson. It says, can you please elaborate on why the words cropping systems are key for the foundational knowledge of agricultural production systems RFA?
I think Matt, go ahead. That was Matt Tromo. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, thanks, John. And that is a very good question there. You know, why did I insist on the word cropping system? It's first to understand that this program started in 2016, and that was to fill a gap that existed in AFRI in our portfolio. As you look at many of the programs that we presented today, they are focusing on specific aspect of agriculture. Either it is plant physiology or plant products or pest management or everything. But there was no program on our portfolio that was looking at agriculture as a production system, as a whole system. So if you look at agriculture, like our role is to build a car, we have different parts that were already available that people were working on, the engine, the tire, the steering wheel. But this specific program was put in place to start putting together those small pieces to see how they work together. That's why we insist on system. It doesn't have to be just cropping system, but like I say, it's the whole production system. And we are not asking each applicant to cover the whole continuum from seed to harvest. As long as you take care of two or more aspects of the production, we will be fine with you. But if you're just looking at, I just want to look at this pesticide or this fertilizer and how it works, there are other programs that will take care of that. But if you're putting together multiple components, you are doing pest management, weed control, and tillage system, cover cropping, and see how all those things interact. That is why what would fit into this program. So that's why we insist on the word system.
Thank you, Matt. The next, I want to go back to the urban green spaces question. It was in regards to Erica's program for pollinator health. It says, link to the pollinator population in urban green spaces that provide important services to urban agriculture. So would that be an important aspect for your program?
Yes, absolutely. That sounds like a potential for an extension project. So it'd be a good way to get the citizens involved or you know, involved. So yes, we have projects just like that focused on pollinators.
Could I add, could I add something to that, Chris? You know, without being, not with a new investigator part of this, but SARE, another program within a regional program within USDA, does a fair amount of work at the regional level on this type of work as well.
Yes, SARE would be another good program if you're interested in pollinator health. They also fund projects for involving pollinators, especially education and citizen involvement.
Thank you both. The next two questions both deal with A1152, Physiology of Agricultural Plants. The first question says, how about working with model plants that are not necessarily crops? And they also want to know if the standard grant should cover 1, 2, or 3 priorities or all of them together.
Okay, I'll start with the second one because it's easier. It can be any of the 3 priority areas, or if you can develop projects that can cover more than one, that's also fine, but it doesn't have to cover more than one of those. And the first one, in terms of model crops, or model plants, we generally discourage that. And so I recommend is to take a look at the funded abstracts. And so you'll see in there, there's very few that fund specifically work done only with the model crop, but you'll also see quite a few projects that include model crops. So there'll be a number of projects that are funded that include model crops, but also an agricultural crop as well. Do you want to add any more on that, Ed?
No, I think you got it perfectly straight. The knowledge and information that would come from a model system that could be translatable to a crop is what we're looking for there. So, but the majority of the work should be in the crop system.
Okay, thank you. This next question is for A1102. What is the typical success rate of proposal?
Okay, and that is me again. It's another good question there. This is a new program that started, like I say, to fill a gap on our portfolio. And we started this in 2016. And what happened is we started offering the program without making too much noise. We basically dropped it in the RFA, and whoever could see it at that time was able to see it and apply. First year, we only received 29 proposals. Out of those 29, we funded, I think, 13 for a success rate of close to 44%. That was pretty high. Those folks were very lucky. Last year, our application went all the way up to almost 80 proposals. So we kind of increased our number of proposals 3-4 times. And the success rate is down to 13-14% right now. And it will continue to go as more people discover the program. So.
Thank you, Matt. This is a general question asking, for new investigators, is there a way to register or be selected to participate in panel reviews?
That's a great question, because it is a really good experience, I think, for new investigators to participate in panels as panelists. So we don't have a way to register, but if you look in the RFA and you see a program that is of interest to you where you would like to serve on the panel, we strongly encourage you to contact the program contacts. And it is helpful if you send them your CV and a little expression of your area of research interest, your publications, and they will use that information to reach out to you and put you in our system, in our data system, so that when they can find a way for you to participate as a panelist in the program, they will know how to reach out to you. Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay.
Thank you, Anne.
That you can't be a PD or co-PD.
That's a good
on
point.
those on that program. So if you are submitting an application as a co-PD or a PD, you can't do it that year. Wait to another year when you're not involved in one of the applications.
Yeah, I would just want to add something there, that if you volunteer to serve and you are not selected that year, don't be discouraged, because the selection process for our panel is very complicated. We take care of so many criteria. You know, the location where you are the type of institution, so many things that by the time they get to your name, they may already be someone from your institution, which immediately will knock you out. But don't be discouraged, continue to volunteer, and that will ultimately happen.
Thank you, everyone. The next question is for Amr Fayad. In program A1181, as part of the extension, could be considered to strengthen plant diagnostic clinic and create student participation within a program.
So thank you for the question. And the short answer is yes and yes. And as I mentioned in the slide, experiential learning is actually encouraged. And regarding the diagnostic clinics, so collaborations with existing biosecurity networks is also encouraged by this RFA and by this program. And it specifically lists the National Plant Diagnostic Network, NPDN, and the National Animal Health Lab Network, NALN. So yes, these collaborations are encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you, Amr. The next question is, are funding rates for seed grants higher than those for standard grants?
So 2021 is the first year for the new investigator seed grant program. So we don't have any statistics on that yet. I would not be surprised if there was a relatively high funding rate for the new investigator seed grant program. But like I said, we haven't done it yet, so we have no statistics. For phase seed grants, I believe that the funding rate is higher for most programs than the standard proposal funding rate. So it could be, for seed grant proposals for phase, it could be as much as 50%. Anybody want to add to that answer?
No, you covered it, Anne, and you were right on the money.
Okay. All right, Chris, next question.
Thank you. The next question also deals with seed grants. It says, I understand seed grants are for generating preliminary data, but can some preliminary data be included in the seed grant applications? Could that be helpful?
Sure. Yep. You can include preliminary data in the seed grant application. And sometimes that is helpful.
Great. This next question is for Vance. It says, does CARE program require supporting letters to assist the effective extension component?
Did you say CARE or SARE? If it's CARE, it needs to go to somebody else. If it was SARE, we're not really discussing that. I could talk to that person could contact me about that at another time.
I'm sorry, that question was for VJ for CARE.
Can you repeat that question, please, Chris?
Yes, it says, does CARE program require supporting letters to assist the effective extension component?
I am not sure about that, but I will find out and get back to the person who has the question. He can get back to me. If he can shoot me an email, vj.nandula@usda.gov, I will send him an answer as soon as I can.
And yes, to add to
I can
that,
add a little bit to that one too. I've worked on the CARE program before as a program specialist. And what you really want to do for these letters of support is that your application is designed to speak to the peer review panel. In our RFA, there's a link to the AFRI review criteria. And for CARE, that would be the criteria for integrated projects. And you want to look at that carefully because that's the evaluation criteria that the panel looks at. And I think one of those items is the ability of the project team to do what's mentioned in their application. So if something like a letter of support would help be evidence of that, then yes, you would want to include that if you can. So Matt, do you have other?
Yeah, I was just trying to say, and thank you, Olivia, for adding that very good perspective there. that there's really, it's a question that we get all the time for all our programs. Is a letter of support required? If yes, how many of them are required? And the answer is always, there is no one size fits all for all those. So there's no answer that we can give to you. It all depends. It depends on the objective of your project. It depends on how you frame those objectives. And you alone will know if those things will strengthen your project or not. If you want to solve an issue, let's say with potatoes production, and you show that you're working with the potato industry, not just you talk about that, but you show a strong letter from them, that will convince the producer, I mean the panelist. But again, it depends on each project, and there's no one size fits all.
Yeah, I would just add for the plant breeding program area, letters of support are looked at by the reviewers, because many of the products that come through plant breeding have are relevant to growers and producers and industry. So reviewers like to see that there is some connection there, and it's already been established. There is interest from the larger community to support the research going forward. So like Matt was saying, it depends on by program and what the objectives of the project are.
Thank you, everyone. This next question is a simple general question. It says, are new investigator seed grants intended for single applicants, or should that new investigator apply for these grants with a larger project team?
So the answer to that question is it can be either. It can be a single investigator, but a new investigator seed grant can also have co-PDs on it, and only the PD has to be eligible for the new investigator status.
Yeah, I would just add that as an applicant, you need to be a little careful, because the budget for a seed grant is $300,000 for a new investigator. So if you add a number of, and that's barely enough probably for one, but it depends on the objectives. If the objectives call for additional investigators to be involved, then that needs to be worked out. But realize that the budget is not extraordinary to support multiple investigators.
The next question is for Anne. Would soil microbiome proposal still be considered under agricultural microbiomes program, or would it go to the soil health program?
So it could be within the agricultural microbiomes and plant systems and natural resources. I think it would depend on the specifics of the project. And if you have a project on a soil microbiome, I would encourage you to contact both me by email and the program contact for the soil microbiome program. And it's helpful from my perspective if you send a little summary of what you want to propose so that I can read it in your email. And then if you want to schedule a phone conversation, we can do that. But it helps me if I have a little advance notice about what you're proposing before we talk.
Thank you, Anne. This next question is for the program A1141, Plant Breeding of Agricultural Production, and they're asking what the proposal success rate is.
It's a little over 20%.
Thank you, Ed. This next question is a general question. It says, besides new investigator, are there any programs that are new in fiscal year 21?
And the new plant breeding program, would that be part of that?
Yeah, that the conventional breeding for cultivar development is new, but as I mentioned when I was speaking, it was embedded in the larger agricultural plant breeding program area, and we lifted it from there and then established a new priority area for conventional breeding. So it's not necessarily new. It just has a program code associated with it now.
Thank you. This next question is for Ann Lichens-Park. If the PBI proposal for caraposis research mostly could be funded through NSF, then the new investigator should follow the NSF rules?
So all of the applications are initially submitted to NSF for the joint review. So you should follow the NSF submission requirements when you submit the proposal. I should mention that it's really not very helpful, honestly, to be thinking that the proposal you're submitting to PBI is an NSF proposal or a NIFA proposal, because when you structure your proposal that way, you're limiting your options for funding. The awards from the Plant Biotic Interaction Program can be solely from NSF, they can be solely from NIFA, or they can be jointly funded from NIFA and NSF. And one of the goals of the program is to really give applicants more flexibility in terms of what they want to propose, so that there could be pieces that are very basic, as well as pieces that are more translational or applied. And you should structure your proposal the way it makes the most sense for what you're trying to achieve, and let us sort out what is appropriate for NSF to fund and what is appropriate for NIFA to fund.
Thank you, Ann. This next question is a general question. It says, do you have a list of woody plants, tree species, for which projects could be funded through some of the programs? Are there any species of woody plants that are excluded?
I don't think there are any species of woody plants that are excluded. I think it's important to realize that forestry is a part of agriculture. So we support research on, various like fruit tree crops, as well as forestry. That's all within our purview. So I'm not aware of any that are excluded.
Yeah, all plants that are legal, right? And if
right.
we're dealing with marijuana, things like that, maybe not. So,
but hemp, yes.
Yes.
Hemp, yes.
And our next question is, the recent wildfires have had an impact on the agriculture, especially in the West Coast. Do any of these programs relate to this issue?
So, yeah, I would say yes, because the wildfires are often affected by the health of trees and other kinds of plants. So dead trees are tinder, and we do have programs that support tree health. So indirectly, I think yes. Does anybody want to add to that?
Yes, also I have seen some proposals that were focusing on the impact of smoke from those fires on crop production. And some of them were focusing also on modeling the movement of that smoke and seeing where they will go and predicting how much impact those could have in agricultural production system. So yes, it depends on just how you will craft that specific objective to fit programs. So I would say yes, many of these programs will accept those type of projects.
Thank you. This next question deals with new investigator eligibility. It says, I am a new assistant professor. I've never received a federal grant before, but have more than 30 papers. Can I apply for the new investigator award for the agricultural microbiomes program? So for Anne.
Well, 30 publications is a lot of publications. So I think it is possible that that would be considered too extensive a publication record. But what I would suggest is that you send me an email and we can communicate more specifically about your situation.
Thank you, Anne. There are no more questions in the chat, but we still have some time. So if anyone would like to ask any, one just came in.
Just a reminder, if you're emailing someone about your new investigator eligibility, you should include a copy of your CV so that the discussion can be an informed one.
Thank you, Olivia. This next question is for agricultural microbiomes for Ann Litchens Park. It says, I have a question about the mention of all legal plants to be included in ag microbiome. Can indoor plant health and microbiomes of urban green spaces, turf grass, still within the ambit of A1402?
So certainly urban green spaces could be, yeah. And again, I think it's hard for me to answer that question without knowing more about what you would be proposing. So again, I think it would be better to send me an email and give me a better understanding of what it is you would be proposing. And then we could schedule a phone call.
If I can add one thing, it's also important that some of the grant applicants look at the non-AFRI programs as well, and to see if some of them, the list that was shown by Anne, they could find something suitable in that program list too.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Anne. This next question says, the new investigator mentions graduation within the past 5 years. Does the graduation date really count?
So I think you're referring to new investigator being within 5 years of a career track position. I don't think it says anything about within 5 years of graduation. And that is a different thing. So a career track position is considered to be a position where your institution will list you as a project director on a standard grant application, as in not a postdoctoral fellowship application, but a standard grant application. So if the time between when you took that position and the submission deadline for the program is less than 5 years, then you qualify. If it's more than 5 years, you don't.
Thank you, Anne. And the next question is, what will be the latest starting date we could propose for the 2021-2022 cycle?
Oh, that is a very good question. And I think it's probably one that you should contact the program contact about, because it's going to really depend. It's going to depend on the submission deadline for the program. It's going to depend on the kind of work that you're proposing. And it's really something I think that you should talk to the program contact about, or email the program contact about.
Thank you, Anne. Right now, there aren't currently any questions in the chat, but we still have some time if anyone wants to add one. This question says, are new investigator submissions rated differently with other submissions?
Rated, I think you mean reviewed. So standard new investigator proposals are reviewed with all other standard proposals. However, the new investigator seed grant proposals will be reviewed just with new investigator seed grant proposals. So the new investigator seed grants are not going to be competing with standard grants.
Thank you. Next question, was just answered by Olivia. Are there any restrictions on which program areas federal scientists applying to as new investigators can apply to? Are there any restrictions on which federal scientists can apply as new investigators?
So the question is, can federal scientists apply as new investigators? Yes. I think I understood that question correctly.
Yeah, sorry. This question is about international collaboration. For international collaboration mentioned in one of the programs, are there any countries that are restricted?
Yes, there are. There's a list on the State Department. I'm not sure if we have one posted. Maybe Mark knows. There are restrictions.
Yeah, you're correct on that. There's restrictions and we don't have it posted on our website. We refer people to the State Department's website.
We do have an international programs office that NIFA does, and they may have more information for you there.
So it looks like we're about running out of time. And if there are no more questions in the Q&A chat box, we do want to just thank you all for participating in this program. We hope that this webinar has been helpful. And again, if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. John, do you want to say anything else?
Nope, that's all I had to say too. I was going to say, don't be afraid to reach out to the programs if you have any more specific questions, and thank everybody for joining us today.
Okay. Enjoy your evening.